the podcast nowhere near Hollywood. It's Afternoon Coffee with Mike and Tim.
Hey, that was good. What I was thinking was maybe welcome to the Afternoon Coffee Podcast with Mike and Tim.
Nice try, boys, but this is how it should sound. This is the Afternoon Coffee Podcast with Mike and Tim.
All right, thank you, Heather. We have a very special guest this week, something a little bit different than what we've done in the past. So, Tim, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
We've got an actor, entertainer, author, and columnist with us. And, we're going to let this be a little bit of a surprise. We're going to hold off on his name for just a bit. We want to highlight some of the things he's done. Again, he's an actor, entertainer. He's best known as Officer Randy Good from TV's In the Heat of the Night. And he performed that on NBC and CBS from 1988 to 1993. And now you can catch this fine man on MeTV and other channels. So he's just the accolades they just stack. And it is his latest film, The Cricket's Dance. He's been in the film Broken, Lukewarm. He starred with John Schneider in that. You know John Schneider. He also starred with singer Natalie Grant, Billy Dean, and what a tremendous actor he is, in the teen drama Decision and in The Solomon's Bunch. That was a children's adventure, but we're going to say more about this guy right here, and he's one of the best actors on television that I've seen. And just not saying that, but I almost said his name. But Mike, if you'll lead us to some of his other ventures, he is an award-winning. Would you say a fiddle player, or would you? Don't talk yet. This is almost like that show way back when. Guess who's there? You remember that show? I don't know.
Guess who's
But
coming
anyway,
to dinner? Yeah.
No, that was another movie. But anyway, but go ahead
Well,
and
I get stuff mixed up. Yeah,
enjoy this musical piece.
I've got a couple of clips right here. So hang on.
Tremendous. So if we was in a hall or anything, you'd hear a resounding applause, that's for sure. And so we want to welcome Randall Franks. Welcome, Randall, to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mike. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. And then all the accolades that I said, man, the list, Mike, it goes on. This actor has also starred in 15 films with stars like Elizabeth McGovern, Mia Wachowski. Is that right, Randall?
Wazakowski.
Doc Tommy Scott, William Hurt. Are you guys sitting down? Dolly Parton, Stella Parton, and Christian Slater. Now, some of the top names, of course, in Hollywood. And we want to hear some stories, of course, of some backstories from Randall today, and then hopefully he'll rejoin us in a second episode. But more than all, I don't even know how you had time for all this, Randall. But he's been in the International Bluegrass Music Museum in Owensboro, Kentucky. They honored him as Bluegrass Legend in 2011, and he was inducted in 2013 into the Independent Country Music Hall of Fame. So this guy has served as celebrity host of the Grand Master Fiddler Championship in the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, IBMA. So we're going to ask a little bit more about that. But Randall, welcome to the show. And Mike and I have a couple questions, and I know you've probably had all these answered and in times past, but they want to know more about you. So tell us, I guess, your pre-acting days. Go from there.
Well, beginning my career was primarily music. Obviously, being a fiddle player, a guitar player. I started out. My folks, of course, both my mom and dad are from Appalachia, and they made a move into Atlanta, Georgia, where I came along to start their businesses. Um, I fell in love with the old time music styles of Appalachia as a boy, coming back home to the family reunions. My great uncle Tom was a fiddle player. He learned from his dad, my great grandfather Harv Franks, and all the cousins. They would gather around and play. And so it was a desire as a kid that I had. I wanted to play music like they did. Living in Atlanta, though, I was separated from the family, so I didn't have immediate family to teach me. Of course, I looked for the venues where it was available as a kid. There were only a couple that were on screen. You could find the Beverly Hillbillies, which occasionally would have Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs
Yeah.
on, and then the Andy Griffith Show, which would feature my friends the Dillards as the Darlings. And so I always look forward to seeing the reruns of those particular episodes when they came on. Eventually, though, when I was about 8 years old, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Donald Greiser came into my elementary school room, and he brought along his violin, and he wanted to get kids to sign up to learn how to play classical violin. Of course, that wasn't my interest, but he happened to play a fiddle tune to get us interested. And so I signed up and convinced my late mother that I needed to take these classes and I needed a violin so I could learn. And with a few extra hours of overtime, she managed to rent me a violin until I could prove that I was going to stick with it. And
Hmm.
I signed up, learned how to play Beethoven and Brahms and Bach and
Oh,
Mozart
Wow.
and
wow.
all those other
Yeah.
foreign writers. And eventually, I went out and found the fiddle players and started learning how to play the fiddle. And among what was interesting is Dr. Greiser taught at a lot of the schools within our county. And so he had young fiddlers or young violinists coming up in all the elementary schools. Well, we paired a lot of those elementary school students. We all gathered together. We would have jam sessions. Those who were interested into the traditional country or old time Appalachian music, we
Mm.
would get together at our homes on Friday nights and have jam sessions. And that's how we started. And from that group of young people from those different elementary schools, we started our own band called the
Oh,
Peachtree Pickers. And each of us started taking up other instruments other than the violin so that we could have a full band. Through the years, I played guitar and mandolin and bass and a little banjo, a little dobro, a little bit of everything. Uh,
Wow.
and eventually, as years went along, I had fiddlers running out my ears, so
hmm.
I had to play the other instruments and learn how to do those. So I played whatever was missing in the band.
Wow.
And, and so we started touring and we played flea markets and churches and all kinds of raffles and um, restaurants. We'd go and play at, then eventually we got into where we go play bluegrass festivals. And eventually we were far enough along in our efforts that we started getting hired to go play fairs. And over the years, we toured for about 7 to 8 years, and that group had about 25 different young people in the group. I was the oldest when we started at 13,
Oh,
and the youngest was about 8 years old. And then sort of we aged up, but we also interchanged through the years, having about 25 different youth playing with us. And I was able to, with the blessings of the support of all the parents, of course, my mom and dad being the most supportive and sort of corralling all of us and getting us where we needed to go and managing our efforts. In just a couple of years there, we managed to get to the Grand Ole Opry. There weren't
wow.
many
Hmm.
places that youth had the opportunity to ascend in country music in those days. You know, the youngest artist in the early 70s to really hit the big time was a friend of mine by the name of Tanya Tucker.
Hmm.
And of course, she had a hit. I believe she was 13 when she had her big hit Delta Dawn back in the early 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
13. Yeah.
back in those days, if you were in country music, there weren't many avenues. You played the fair circuit or you played the bar circuit. There were only and then if you were big enough, then you could play the concerts in the gymnasiums and in the auditoriums, touring with a package show. So our avenue was sort of limited. We got into the bluegrass festivals, which was another performance avenue outside of quote country music in the genre styles. We played some of the gospel music sings, which was yet another genre. But eventually we managed to take the success in those fields and move over into country music and get recognition by some of the bigger artists in country music and get to the Grand Ole Opry with the help of folks like Roy Acuff and Jim and Jesse McReynolds and
Wow.
Bill Monroe. And that's when I started my career in Nashville. And the first round was about 1983. So I was in country music alongside the stars of the 1980s. In fact, that year I was recognized, and of course, the main publication of that time in country music was the Music City News. So I was blessed to be among the new faces of country music and the features that they did alongside Reba McEntire in Alabama and Lee Greenwood. And
Wow.
of course, I was a teenager at the time, but that opened the doors in country music in the early 80s. And then within a couple of years, thankfully, that success continued and allowed me to cross over into acting, as a country music entertainer, getting my chances to perform and learn how to do both television and variety TV, and then moving on to acting.
Let me go back to age 13, and that's pretty much when you started playing, maybe a little bit before that, correct? At
Well, I
age
started
13.
playing about 8, but
8, but
professionally touring with a
at 13.
band about 13. Of course, there were public performances between 8 and 13, but I really consider, the first professional gigs to be 13, 14 years old.
Okay. So how many instruments, Randall, did you play then? And of course now, fast forward till now.
Well, back in those teen years, I would say there were about 7 that I was moving back and forth between, depending on the needs.
Hmm.
The most proficient at the time were the mandolin, the fiddle, the mountain dulcimer, the guitar. I played enough banjo to be irritating, a little bit of the resonator guitar, the auto harp, most of the stringed instruments, just to get comfortable with all of them because you're learning about something. You want to know how to do a little of everything. And thankfully, I was blessed with mentors who played all of those instruments and wanted me to find where I was going to be. Because as a youth, you're trying to find your identity, even the piano. A lot of people don't realize, like in Southern gospel music, I was a great admirer of the Statesman Quartet and the Lefevres and the early gospel
Oh yeah,
music
I know that.
performers, and the piano was the key thing. So I even took piano lessons to learn how
Wow.
to play piano. And if you go out, you can find if you find some early Southern gospel uh, television shows, especially in the 1980s, you'll find me back there pounding the ivories
How
with
about that?
some of the acts that I
Wow.
was touring with at that time.
You listed a lot of different instruments. Was there one that was much more challenging than the others?
Well, really, the fiddle is the most challenging to me. Now, well, I'll take that back. Banjo was even more challenging than the fiddle for me because I had, the banjo is a roll on this side and then the fingering on this side. I could do the roll individually, I could do the fingering individually, but putting them together took a lot of deep concentration on my behalf.
Yeah.
So I admire banjo players who can consistently do the banjo and sing, especially when you can mix those two things together. I know some banjo players who will play when it's time to sing, they'll stop and they'll start again, but others who just keep rolling. It's an amazing instrument, but for me, the fiddle was also because of the intonation required. You have to be able to hear the note. You can't play off key because there are no frets like the
Right,
guitar and the
right.
mandolin and the other instruments.
Oh,
You
okay.
have
I
to
didn't
be able to
realize that.
hear the tones and be able to play on key.
And the reason I asked that, this brings me to a couple points. And the success did not happen overnight. In other words, you had to put time into this, Randall. I mean, you had to. I'm looking here, your musical career you've got over 24 album releases, 21 singles, and over 200 recordings with various artists, from various genres. And so, what we're hearing here from you is that it didn't happen overnight, correct?
Very much so. It didn't. I was very blessed early on, as I said, the pathway of being able to be invited to perform for the Grand Ole Opry, and then them welcoming you as part of the quote Grand Ole Opry family. At that time, it was a great blessing. But even there, you're not immediately just a star. You're part of the family, and you're still honing your skills. You're still working to create that visibility in the audience, create an audience, because
Hmm.
essentially you're building from scratch. Just like today, we're blessed with what folks are watching us on the internet or listening to us on the radio, uh, likely through the internet. We didn't have that then. So there were only very few opportunities to get to the audience. You had television channels. Eventually, you had cable, which in 1983, we were able to take that Peachtree Picker group and start doing a worldwide variety show called the Country Kids TV series.
Mm.
And that opportunity, of course, spread and helped to build the audience because people were seeing you on television. And one of the things I learned early on, and this is from an experience, I did my first television show in 1981. But somewhere in the early 1980s, we did a series called Mountain Music Showdown, and it was a feature of performances from the Yellow Daisy Festival at Stone Mountain, Georgia, which
Oh,
was a competition. And the Lieutenant Governor, Zell Miller, at that time, he
yeah, I
hosted
remember.
the show, and it was created for PBS and it was aired across the country.
Mm.
But I remember distinctly, we were, of course, touring, playing shows. That episode, or the first episode that we were in, we were scattered amongst several episodes, if I recall correctly. But the first one that we were in, the next few performances, our record sales went through the roof.
Oh, my.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was like that television exposure just exploded the audience interest in this young group of pickers. And so I learned very quickly that television was our medium to get to an audience and create and build an audience that was going to stay with us over time. And that was one of the things, we began building through, and I credit my late mother with this, Pearl. We have a scholarship fund for my late parents, that I'll share with you about later. But she had the intuitiveness to begin a fan club very early on and start
Mm.
building that audience. And at one point in country music history, we had the second largest fan club in country music. So it's creating the audience and taking them with you wherever you go.
And that's the direction, and that's why I wanted to hear definitely your bio, and of course we'll talk. I'm not going to spoil it, but I know the foundation you're speaking of, that your parents started. But where I'm getting at here is that mentoring. I think the person that gave Randall Franks the confidence at age 8, and the others at age 13 and beyond, those people in your life. I mean, you just can't pay them back. You just can't thank them enough for giving you that boost of confidence. And I think sometimes in our society now, if people say, well, I can't afford to do this or that, you can afford to help someone out. And I want to say this, you've encouraged me personally. You've encouraged me, and I'll tell you why here in a little bit, but think about it. But anyway, but you are an encourager, and there are other people that you probably want to not name their names, but I'm thinking of one that, maybe Ryan Stinson, right? Ryan,
Mhm.
is that you've encouraged him, and you've helped him along, and you guys look a lot alike too, by the way. Anybody ever say that?
Oh yes, yeah. Ryan gets asked that a lot. How we are related. Ryan is a talented young musician, and he was. We've had almost 30 scholars to come up through our Share America program. Ryan is one of those. Of course, he is long now graduated. Our first scholarships that we gave away were back in 2007. So some of those young people are now 30. Or pushing 30. Um, and they're well into their careers. And Ryan is one of those. He's well into his career, sharing his talents on stages and theaters in Pigeon Forge and Nashville, touring, doing concerts, and playing, even for things like Elvis Week in Memphis. And
Wow.
he's not being Elvis; he's going doing his singing and his piano playing, but he's built up that level of confidence that I see him on stage, and I'm often wowed by what I see. And I use him even today. With the tour, I tour with my show, the Hollywood Hillbilly Jamboree, and I'll include Ryan or I'll include some of the other young people at times to be part of that show,
Mm,
and just to watch them grow. It's very important to me to see that because the people that gave me a chance, of course, most of them are long gone, but had it not been for them, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And it's my job to now mentor that next group of young people that are coming up. Bill Monroe, Jim and
mm.
Jesse. Of course, Jesse McReynolds is still with us. He's 90, and we're still great friends. And in fact, I'll go occasionally and go and perform with him, and he'll still support me if I call him and need him to do something. He's ready to go and has been since I was a young man, helping them behind the record table as a teenager
Mm,
at their shows or at
right.
big shows like Fanfare, Country Music Fanfare. You can find early pictures of me in the Jim and Jesse booth helping them reach their fans. So it's,
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
but you talked about encouragers, and that sort of segues into uh, something I did to sort of
Yes.
thank those folks. Is I wrote a book series called Encouragers, and there's 3 volumes, and like this one right here, Encouragers Finding the Light. Now that title meant to me is these people were helping me find the light in my life. It has a dual meaning too. Obviously, you can find the light of Christ as well, but uh, many of the encouragers that you mentioned that were there in those years of being 13, 14, 15 and on up are included in this book, both professionals and those folks who just played on the weekends, who were there for me at those Friday night pickings, people like Eugene Akers, Cotton and Jane Carrier, who were big stars in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. But by the time in the 1970s that I had come along, their heyday had passed. But they invested tremendously in me and those other young people. They would come to our picking sessions and were regulars there, teaching us how to do the tunes that they did back on radio in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when they were big stars, and helping us to learn how to entertain, do comedy, share any kind of almost like the old vaudeville kinds of presentations. They gave us the full gamut of, well, this is how you do a show, and that's how I learned. And I think
Mm,
that's something that's being that some of our young performers are not getting the full picture. Now we're sort of creating these performers who are tailored just to be pop stars. And
yes.
that's great. That's a wonderful form of music, and if that's what they enjoy and what they find success at, that's great. But I think it's helpful to know the entire chapters, all the different chapters of entertainment of how we got to where we are, from the old medicine shows to the radio shows to eventually going to television to performing on stage, for the people who did the old kerosene circuit where they had kerosene flambeaux on the front of the stage and they did their
Mhm.
shows, all the way up to today where we have all these big theatrical things in these large coliseums and you know tens of thousands of people out there. It's a blessing to know all about that, and you can incorporate little bits and pieces from all of that. There's nothing more fun to me than pull out something that I learned from somebody back in the that were stars in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and bring that to
Right.
today and watch
Sure.
the audience react. Say, Well, isn't that interesting? I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, because most people don't know the history, and most people aren't even interested in what happened back 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Well, just the transitions of the music. So, I mean, from as I mentioned, we have different genres. I've been blessed to have success in Southern gospel music and bluegrass music and folk music and country music. At one time, they were all separate.
Hmm.
At one
Yeah.
time, they were all together. So it
Mm.
depends. The further back in time you go, they were all one thing. Then as the main music, which was country music, initially country western, before that it was hillbilly, as it sort of got more sophisticated, it sort of started pairing off where gospel artists were segregated over here and bluegrass
Hmm.
artists were segregated over here, and they wound up having to create their own genres. Folk was the same. So everybody, all these new genres back in the 1960s started being created with new venues, festivals, with new record companies, with new managers, so they all had their own little systems. And if you were blessed to be able to work in those systems, you could reach a level of stardom in each of those genres. And if you were lucky, then you could hop on over through that level of stardom into the country music
Sure.
field. And that's the track that we took
I want to
back
mention one
recently.
thing, then I'm going to hand it over to Mike, and that is an encourager for me through the years has been a man by the name of Randall Ferrell. And the reason I mention Randall is, this guy, he can play excellent banjo. Do you know Randall
Oh,
Ferrell?
I know Randall. We're great friends. In fact, we did several years ago. I was asked to do a favor and appear in a version of Smoke on the Mountain, and Randall and I were both the part of the band for Smoke on the Mountain some years ago, probably about 13. I've lost track of time, but many
Good.
years ago at the Colonnade. Had a lot of fun. Great, talented musician.
He's since retired, and then he's putting things now on Facebook and all that. He's doing he's just a great musician, as you are. And then I want to mention you, and what I was going to refer back to is that our last 1890s day, I had my car and my daughter there in the parade, and you said now there's Tim Meller voiceovers. He's Ringgold's best voiceover talent. I don't know if you remember saying that, and I appreciate that, but I'm the only voiceover talent in Ringgold besides you. So for that, but I do appreciate that. So
You're
uh,
welcome. You're
yeah,
welcome.
I
Yeah.
thank you so much. And so you and I have had some typing back and forth there, and you've encouraged me on a couple of things with some websites and different things. But there's always someone that you can mentor, and always some place that we can learn more about our craft. And Officer Randy Good still has got things to learn. Am I right about
Oh, very
different
much
things
so.
in life?
Very much so. Every
So
day.
every
I
day,
so yes, there are mentors out there that I'm blessed with that, I'm talking with. They're kind to offer their insights. We're all sort of trying to do things that are much different and alien to us, that in some respects, but it's a new form of a time when we can share new ways
yes.
to share our message, share our talent, share our products from the books like the Encourager series or the murder mysteries that I write or the music that comes on CD, and we share that information in a new and exciting way, and hopefully will expand the audience. And when the time comes that we can go back and perform, hopefully they'll come out and see us.
Well, that'll do it for part one of our interview with Randall Franks, master musician, actor, and we're going to hear more about his relationship with Carol O'Connor on the set of In the Heat of the Night. Fascinating stuff there. So be sure to tune in next week. And as Red used to say, good night and may God bless.
Guests on the Afternoon Coffee Podcast stay at the Real Rest Inns and Suites, the only 2-star hotel in the tri-state area with a don't ask, don't tell policy for snakes and other exotic pets.
This episode has been made possible by our awesome intro voice, Heather Foster. You can find out more about her at heatherfostervoice.com. All music has been provided and produced by Marble Planet Productions. You can hear more about them on Instagram at Marble Planet Productions. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can either email us at afternooncoffeepodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at afternoonjava.